Have you ever felt that life is just a series of problems that can't be solved? Why is it that some people, when facing difficulties, are able to rise to the challenge, ultimately becoming more mentally mature, while more people choose to avoid problems and escape pain, which ultimately causes their minds to stagnate? We often think that life should be comfortable and smooth, so we complain, we lament, feeling that life is unfair. But there is a book that tells us that it is precisely this mistaken belief that life should be easy that brings us the most pain. The book we are going to study in depth today is this soul-stirring masterpiece, The Road Less Traveled. Over 100,000 people on Dubbin have given it an average rating of 8.4. Despite almost no publicity, it stayed on the New York Times bestseller list for nearly 20 years, purely through word of mouth. So what made it create such a publishing miracle? Because it was the first to candidly tell us that nearly everyone has psychological issues, just varying in degree. And the key to solving all of life's problems is 2 words: self-discipline. In the time to come, we will delve into the core of this book and explore the powerful tools of self-discipline. This is not just a book share, but a journey toward mental maturity. If you long to understand the root of suffering and find the path to inner peace and strength, the road less traveled, then please turn the pages with me. Do you often feel that life is exhausting, as if there is an endless line of problems waiting to be solved? The mess at work, the trivial matters at home, the little thoughts you struggle with inside yourself. There are moments when you just want to find a place to lie down and tell the world, "Leave me alone. I just want to be a couch potato." Deep down, most of us secretly harbor a fantasy that life should be easy. So when we face difficulties, our first reaction is to complain, "Why is my life so hard? Why is it always me who's unlucky?" We feel it's destiny, it's others, it's the world that owes us an easier life. But the first sentence in The Road Less Traveled hits us like a cold splash of water, waking us from this fantasy. It says, life is full of suffering. Don't rush to argue or feel discouraged. Because Dr. Peck immediately follows by saying this is one of the greatest truths in the world. Once you genuinely accept this, most of the pain in your life will dissipate. Sounds magical, right? A seemingly pessimistic viewpoint turns out to be the starting point for inner peace. Why? Because when we stop fantasizing that life should be smooth sailing, we can stop complaining and focus all our energy on doing something truly useful, which is solving problems. But we are naturally averse to solving problems because it means enduring pain. That lazy child inside us is best at avoiding it. Have you noticed how many ways we've invented to escape pain? Some people use the method of procrastination, thinking that if they wait a little longer, the problem might go away on its own. Others use the mental victory method, pretending not to see the problem, numbing themselves with games, short videos, or alcohol, and exchanging a few hours of fleeting happiness. Some people are best at shifting blame, pushing problems onto others. After all, it's not my fault. But this book cuts to the heart of the issue, pointing out that this tendency to avoid problems and escape pain is the root of all psychological disorders. If you avoid the pain of facing reality, life will eventually repay you with an overwhelming amount of chronic anxiety and depression. The famous psychologist Carl Jung once said that neurosis is a common substitute for life suffering. You think you have avoided the pain of solving external problems, but life will exchange it for another kind of trouble that tortures you even deeper. Pain is conserved. You avoid A, but you will inevitably encounter B, and B is often harder to deal with than A. So, life actually gives us a choice. Will you choose the short, intense, but growth-inducing positive pain of solving a problem, or the long, unending and life-draining negative pain that comes from avoiding it? The truly wise people have seen through this. They treat life as a game of leveling up, where every problem is a monster that helps you gain equipment and experience. As Benjamin Franklin said, only pain brings wisdom. Face it, solve it, conquer it, and our thoughts and minds will keep surpassing their own limits. What makes this book so great is that it doesn't just tell us to face difficulties courageously. It gives us a complete set of self-discipline techniques that help us actively choose positive pain and gain strength from it. So, what are the 4 techniques that will help us turn failure into victory? They are: delay gratification, take responsibility, respect the facts, and maintain balance. These 4 techniques are interlinked and progressive, forming the essential path to mental maturity. Next, let's delve deeply into the first technique, delay gratification. Let's take a look at those who always lose interest in things after 3 minutes of enthusiasm and always prioritize immediate pleasure. What kind of time trap have they fallen into? In the previous section, we talked about self-discipline being the martial arts secret to solving life's problems, which consists of 4 moves. In this section, we will delve into a detailed breakdown. The first move, and also the starting point of mental maturity, is delaying gratification. When you hear this term, you might think of slogans like "control your diet" and "get moving," and find it a bit cliché. But the book The Road Less Traveled approaches it from a surprisingly trivial question: how do you eat a cake? Do you eat the cream first, or the cake itself? You might find this funny. What does eating a cake matter? Could eating the cream first lead to a failed life? Don't rush to judge. This is where the book's brilliance lies. It can dig out the thought patterns that truly control our lives from our most insignificant daily habits. Whether you eat the cream first or the cake itself is irrelevant. What matters is that it's like a mirror, reflecting your subconscious way of prioritizing pain and pleasure in life. Let's zoom in on this pattern. It determines whether you'll grit your teeth and finish that annoying report in an hour, then enjoy a relaxed afternoon with peace of mind, or scroll through short videos for 2 hours first, only to be overwhelmed by growing anxiety after that fleeting pleasure. It determines whether you'll stick to working out, endure muscle soreness, and then enjoy a healthy body and confidence, or lie on the sofa eating snacks first, only to sigh at the abnormal indicators in your medical report one day. You see, the cake question is never a cake question. It is a microcosm of the countless choices in our lives and the first touchstone of our mental maturity. The 30-year-old financial analyst in the book is a typical cream-first type of person. At the beginning of each day's work, he completes the easiest and most pleasant tasks first, enjoys a short sense of accomplishment, and then spends the rest of his time dealing with those difficult and annoying tasks, enduring pain and suffering. In the end, his procrastination became more and more serious. The psychologist prescribed a simple solution: change his eating order. The doctor did the math for him. With a 7-hour workday, an hour of pain followed by 6 hours of happiness is clearly better than an hour of happiness followed by 6 hours of pain. This is the essence of delaying gratification, not coveting temporary comfort, but resetting the order of happiness and pain in life. First, face the problem and feel the pain, then solve it and enjoy greater happiness. This is the only viable way of life. So why can't we help but eat the cream first? Because this easy first, hard later, pleasure first, pain later program is likely installed in our brains during childhood. Children who fail to learn to delay gratification often become problem students when they grow up. The book says their IQ is no different from others, but they refuse to work hard, act on impulse, skip classes, skip school, even fight, and associate with drugs. Enjoy first, pay later becomes their motto, and eventually, they pay a lifelong price for the happiness they overspent in their youth. Whether a child can learn this crucial ability has little to do with how many times their parents scold or beat them. The book clearly points out that many children lacking self-discipline are often severely physically punished, but this kind of education not only has little effect, but even worsens the situation. 2 things really work: role models and love. First, role models. It's impossible for parents who live a messy, unconstrained life to demand their children to be well organized. The book sharply points out that many parents tell their children, "Do as I say, but don't learn from me." But a child's heart is like a mirror. They always imitate their parents' true selves. The way parents handle problems will be fully accepted by their children as golden rules. But more important than role models is that parents are willing to invest time and energy in their children, that is, true love. Many parents' discipline of their children is essentially not education, but venting their anger and dissatisfaction. Truly loving parents are willing to take time to understand their children, listen to their thoughts, and flexibly use encouragement, praise, or necessary warnings instead of just scolding and beating. When a child feels that their parents truly care about them, even willing to accompany them through the pain of growth, this sense of being cherished and valued will plant two precious seeds in the child's heart. The first is self-respect and self-love. When a child feels, "I am valuable," they will know how to cherish themselves and restrain their current self for a better future. Emphasizing the cognition of "I am a valuable person" is the basic premise of a sound mind and the foundation of self-discipline. The second is a sense of security. Children start to have the fear of abandonment from 6 months old. At this time, parents' repeated assurances and fulfillment of promises, "We love you and will never abandon you," will build a safe base in the child's heart. Such a child will believe that the world is predictable and the future is worth looking forward to. Their inner subtext is, "It's okay. I can endure this pain because I know there's candy waiting for me and no one can take it away." So they have the patience to wait. But a child who grows up in an environment lacking love will feel that the world is chaotic and untrustworthy. Especially when parents threaten them with, "If you don't obey, I won't love you anymore," they will feel the future is full of fear. Their inner subtext is, "I must seize the immediate happiness because the future is illusory. Who knows what will happen next second?" This distrust of the future makes them people who can only chase the cream in front of them. So you see, the procrastination and short-sightedness we show in work, study, and intimate relationships as adults, the fruits that make us suffer, were actually planted in childhood. Okay, now we have obtained the first key, understanding that we need to rearrange the pain and pleasure in our lives like a smart life planner. But another problem arises. Even if we are ready to eat that tough piece of cake first, what if we point at the cake and say that this is not my cake, but someone forced it on me? That is the second key we need to unlock, taking responsibility. In the previous section, we unlocked the first key to self-discipline, learning to reorder the pain and pleasure in life like a smart life planner. But another problem comes. Even if we summon up the courage to prepare to eat that tough piece of cake first, what if we point at the cake and subconsciously tell ourselves that this is not my cake, it's someone else who forced it on me, and that the world is unfair to me? That is the second, more common and more cunning enemy we encounter on the road to mental maturity, evading responsibility. And the second key we need to unlock is taking responsibility, whose core is to bravely say the most powerful words about our own lives. "This is my problem, and I will solve it." It sounds simple, but we are naturally experts at evading responsibility. The book tells a story that Dr. Peck encountered when he was in the army, which vividly depicts this kind of mentality of ours. At that time, there was an officer on Okinawa who was addicted to alcohol, and the problem was so serious that he had to receive psychological counseling. Dr. Peck asked him why he was addicted to alcohol. He said, "This damn place is really boring at night. What else can I do besides drinking?" The doctor then asked, "Do you like reading?" He said, "Yes, I do." "Then why not read instead of drinking?" The officer replied, "The barracks are too noisy to read." The doctor asked again, "How about going to the library?" "The library is too far." The doctor retorted, "Is it farther than the bar?" The officer was suddenly tongue-tied and had to say, "Well, actually, I don't like reading that much." The doctor changed the topic. "Do you like fishing?" "Of course, I like it very much. Then why not go fishing at night? There is no place to fish on Okinawa at night. The doctor said, that's not right. I heard there are several night fishing clubs. In the end, the officer had to admit that actually, I don't like fishing that much either. You see, after talking for so long, this officer still refused to admit that drinking was his own problem. He would rather believe that this damn environment in Okinawa caused all this. As long as the environment doesn't change, he can do nothing. In the end, he was dismissed from the military for continuing to drink. This story may sound a bit extreme, but it is like a mirror, reflecting the shadows of many of us. We always want to evade responsibility, and we would rather play the role of a victim, attributing the problems to others, society, or fate. Dr. Peck distinguishes two of the most common psychological tendencies in a very easy-to-understand way. He calls them neurosis and character disorder. The so-called neurosis, we can call it the responsibility-taking personality. Such people, no matter what conflicts they encounter, think it is their own fault. They keep saying, I could have, I perhaps should, I shouldn't. All day long. They impose too many responsibilities on themselves, and as a result, they make themselves exhausted and live a very painful life. The other so-called character disorder, we can call it the blame-shifting personality. Such people are just the opposite. They are never willing to take responsibility and always think that the problems are others' faults. Their favorite words are I can't possibly, I can't do it. There is a very incisive summary in the book. Neurotics make themselves live in pain, while people with character disorders make others live in pain. Especially when parents with a blame-shifting personality, they will attribute their own misfortunes in life, such as failed marriages and unsuccessful careers, to their children. They will say to their children, if it weren't for raising you, I would have. Such messages will cause great psychological trauma to children and make them fall into a cycle of pain. When we pass the responsibility to others like a ball, what exactly are we avoiding? Dr. Peck quotes a concept from the Thinker From, which reveals the truth in one sentence: we are avoiding freedom. The book tells the author's own personal experience. When he was young and worked as a doctor, he was exhausted because his work was fully scheduled. So he went to his director, hoping that the director could help him solve the scheduling problem. He thought that as a director, it was his responsibility to solve the difficulties of his subordinates. But after listening to his complaints, his director just said calmly to him, "Oh, I can see you are in trouble." The author kept asking what to do, and the director finally said one sentence, "Scott, your trouble is related to time. When we say my time is not my time, so it's not my business. You have a problem in handling the schedule." The author was very angry at that time, thinking that this director was simply too irresponsible. But 3 months later, he finally figured it out. The director was right, and the problem was actually himself. He himself chose to spend more time on patients, so the resulting exhaustion and guilt towards his family were the consequences of his own choice. The responsibility could only be borne by himself. When he wanted to pass this problem to the director, he was actually asking the other party to be responsible for me, to control me. He was giving up his freedom and rights. So you see, while we shift the responsibility to others, we also hand over the leadership of our lives. We seem to love freedom, but in fact, we take the initiative to give up freedom because we are afraid of the pain brought by taking responsibility. Therefore, taking responsibility is the core of mental maturity. It means that we no longer play the role of a victim who complains about fate and waits for salvation, but bravely stand up and say to our own lives, "This is my problem, and I will solve it." This sentence is the basic premise for solving all problems. It can free us from the quagmire of passivity and let us regain the leadership of our lives. All right, now we have the second key, and we've resolved to bravely say, "This is my problem." But a new and deeper challenge arises. Even if I'm willing to take responsibility, is the ruler I use to distinguish right from wrong accurate in itself? Could the ideas in our minds be wrong from the start? This brings us to the third key to self-discipline, the one that demands the most courage: respecting the truth. We've just acquired the second key, learning to bravely declare to our own lives, "This is my problem, and I will solve it." This is a tremendous power. It transforms us from passive victims into the masters of our own lives. Yet a new and deeper challenge emerges. Even if I'm willing to take responsibility, is the ruler I use to judge right and wrong truly accurate? Might the beliefs we hold as unshakable truths be flawed from the very beginning? This leads us to the third key to self-discipline, the one requiring the greatest courage: respecting the truth. Dr. Peck offers a brilliant metaphor here. He says each person's perception of reality is like a life map, and we rely on this map to navigate the complex terrain of life. If the map is precise, we can clearly know where we are, where we want to go, and how to get there. But if the map is riddled with errors and flaws, we will undoubtedly lose our way. The problem is that each of our maps is more or less inaccurate. Why? First, we are not born with a perfect map. We must draw it bit by bit, which requires immense effort. More critically, this map needs constant revision. For the world changes, and we change too. The map you used as a child must be revised in adolescence. The map you relied on when poor must be updated when you become wealthy. But what do most of us do? We grow lazy about revising our maps. We spend half our lives painstakingly crafting a map that feels comfortable, believing it to be flawless, even sacred and untouchable. When new information or ideas emerge that conflict with our old map, our first reaction is not to correct it, but to feel fear and anger. We may even denounce the new information as heresy. We devote far more time and energy to defending an outdated, obsolete map than to revising it. This phenomenon of clinging to an old map, disconnected from reality, has a specific term in psychology: transference. Simply put, it means we inappropriately and rigidly apply the old map formed in childhood to the adult world. The book tells the story of a computer technician trapped in a fatal old map. He sought help because his wife had left him with their children, leaving him in profound agony. His relationships were a mess. He hopped from job to job, constantly clashing with supervisors. He viewed all authority figures, police, teachers, bosses, as liars and frauds. His life map bore a single phrase in the largest font: "You can't trust anyone." How was this map created? In his childhood, his parents were extremely unreliable. They promised him a bicycle for his birthday, but later forgot the pledge. They agreed to pick him up at a designated spot, but neglected it entirely, leaving him waiting alone. Amid repeated disappointments, the child found a way to protect his heart. He concluded, "I can't trust my parents. They are unworthy of trust." This conclusion shielded him at the time, reducing his expectations and thus his pain. But the danger was that he took this lesson from the small universe of his home and treated it as a universal truth. His life map became fixed on the belief that no one is trustworthy. Thus, as an adult, his constant conflicts with authority were unconsciously an attempt to validate the accuracy of his old map. He even brought this distrust into therapy. He repeatedly demanded changes to his appointment times, made endless excuses for his absences, and ultimately made it impossible for the doctor to help him. Then he could tell himself, "See, I was right. Even psychologists can't be trusted." He turned his life into a series of self-fulfilling tragedies. How, then, can we update our maps? The only way is to dedicate ourselves to the truth, bravely accepting external questioning and challenges. We must lay our maps bare and let reality test their accuracy. But we are naturally afraid of being challenged. As parents, we might snap at our children, "Don't talk back," I'm in charge here. As partners, we might say to our spouses, let's keep things as they are, don't rock the boat. We cling to our closed little worlds, like prisoners in a cell, breathing the same stale air repeatedly, lost in personal illusions. Undergoing psychotherapy, therefore, is one of the most human acts, for it requires immense courage. You are paying someone to professionally and systematically challenge every corner of your old map. To respect the truth, besides the courage to be challenged, we need the discipline to remain honest. We must not lie to others, and more importantly, we must not lie to ourselves. The book specifically highlights the harm of white lies. Black lies are outright fabrications. White lies are the intentional concealment of part of the truth. We often view white lies as kind, meant to protect others, especially our children. For example, a couple might pretend to be loving in front of their children despite a strained relationship, or a family might tell their children everything is fine when facing financial troubles. But the author argues that such protection is actually deprivation. It robs children of the right to understand the true nature of money, marriage, and the world. More importantly, such concealment is often not rooted in love, but in parents' desire to preserve their authority and avoid being challenged by their children. Respecting the truth, then, means living as much as possible in reality, maintaining maximum honesty with ourselves and others. This is difficult and may even bring pain, but the rewards far outweigh the costs. Only those who dare to face the truth can live with a clear conscience under the sun, free from the torment of guilt and the shadow of fear. All right, now we have the third key. We understand the need to respect the truth and constantly revise our life maps. But this immediately raises a new, subtler question. How do we strike the delicate balance between upholding principles and being flexible, between expressing anger and staying calm, between taking responsibility and refusing burdens that are not ours to bear? This leads us to the fourth and most refined key to self-discipline, maintaining balance. We've just grasped the third key, respecting the truth. But you may notice it immediately presents a new, more nuanced, and harder challenge. How do we find that middle ground? For instance, between standing firm and adapting, between showing anger and remaining composed, between shouldering responsibility and rejecting what isn't ours, all these demand a higher wisdom. This brings us to the fourth and most exquisite key to self-discipline, maintaining balance. What does maintaining balance mean? It means establishing a flexible system of constraints. The book uses anger as an example. Someone who never gets angry is destined to be bullied and oppressed, ultimately destroyed. But someone who only knows how to rage, without restraint, will also wreck their life. Thus, truly mature people possess not only the courage to be angry, but also the wisdom to stay calm, knowing how to express emotions in the right way at the right time. Mastering this art of balance is a mark of mental maturity. This story teaches a simple truth. At life's sharp turns, you must learn to surrender certain things to maintain balance and keep moving forward. The pain of losing balance is far more intense and lasting than the pain of surrender. This principle is simple to state, but extremely difficult to practice. For what we need to give up in life is far more than the fleeting pleasure of riding a bike. Sometimes, we need to abandon deep-rooted behavioral patterns, or even entire old life philosophies. And this process of giving up is often accompanied by a familiar emotion, depression. The book puts forward a groundbreaking idea, the value of depression. We usually think of depression as a bad thing, a disease to be eliminated. But the author says that many times, depression is a natural and healthy phenomenon. It is an intense signal from our subconscious, telling us that some old part of us, some once genuine belief or behavioral pattern, is no longer adapted to our current life and must be let go. Depression is a funeral for the old self, and this funeral is a prerequisite for rebirth. We have to give up so many things in life. The book lists a long list, we must abandon the illusion of omnipotence imagined in infancy, the dependence on parents in childhood, the sense of infinite potential in adolescence, the sexual attraction of youth, the delusion of immortality, and finally, ourselves and life itself. The author tells another story from his adulthood. Once, to make his 10-year-old daughter happy, he played chess with her. She was quite good at it, and they were evenly matched. But by 9 o'clock, since she had to go to school the next day, she urged him to hurry. At that moment, the competitive self within him emerged. He thought chess was a serious matter and shouldn't be treated perfunctorily, even saying to her, "If you don't want to play properly, we might as well stop now." As a result, what should have been a warm night ended with his daughter running upstairs in tears. At that moment, the author said he thought again of his 9-year-old self lying in the bushes. Once again, he suffered because he didn't know how to give up. His initial goal was to make his daughter happy, but his strong, unyielding desire to win ruined everything. He realized that the survival instinct that had helped him win so much in childhood and youth had become an obstacle in his new stage of life, middle age, as a father. He had to kill that old self with his own hands. The book uses resolute words. That guy had to die. I ended his life with my own hands. This process of killing the old self is painful, but it also brings rebirth. As the book says, when old things disappear, new things are born. The pain of death is the pain of birth, and the pain of birth is also the pain of death. By now, we have unlocked all 4 keys to self-discipline: delaying gratification, taking responsibility, respecting facts, and maintaining balance. They are like a complete set of tools, helping us constantly solve problems and polish our minds on the path of life's cultivation. But you might ask, why do we have to work so hard at self-discipline, endure pain, take responsibility, revise our maps, and learn to give up to walk this road less traveled? What is the most fundamental and powerful driving force? Dr. Peck's answer is a single word: love. Next, let's enter the core and warmest part of the book to explore the truth of love. In the previous section, we talked about the ultimate power called love that drives us down the arduous path of self-discipline. Since love is such a powerful force, what exactly is love? Before we delve into the true definition of love, we must first do one thing: diffuse minds, debunking the most common and dangerous myths about love. For only when we know what love is not can we truly see what love is. The book states that throughout history, the most common misunderstanding about love is equating falling in love with love. That sudden, electric passion, that intoxicating feeling that the other person is the whole world, we are all too familiar with it. But Dr. Peck tells us that this feeling is not true love. To understand this, we need to first grasp a psychological concept: ego boundaries. Imagine an infant in the first few months of life. They feel themselves as one with the world. When they are hungry, they think the whole world is hungry. When their mother sings, they think they are singing. In their perception, they are merged with the universe as one. Gradually, they realize that their wishes and the world's actions are separate. When they cry from hunger, their mother may not appear immediately, and that is when the self is born. They begin to build a boundary between themselves and the external world. This is the ego boundary. We live our entire lives within the shell formed by this ego boundary, which makes us feel independent, but also brings ultimate loneliness. What happens in that moment of falling in love? At that moment, a part of our ego boundaries suddenly collapses, and our emotions rush like a breaching flood, irresistibly toward the person we love. In that instant, loneliness vanishes, and we seem to return to the ecstatic state of oneness with the world from infancy. But this is an illusion, an emotional and spiritual regression. Why is it an illusion? The book gives 3 core reasons. First, it is not a choice of subjective will. You cannot command yourself to fall in love with someone you think you should love. It is an instinctive reaction, often linked to sexual impulse. Second, it does not bring true growth. The passion of infatuation will fade sooner or later. When the illusion shatters and both parties' ego boundaries close again, you will painfully discover how different your desires, hobbies, and thoughts really are. At this point, many people choose to break up, saying, "We have no feeling anymore." Third, falling in love cannot promote mental maturity. In the heat of love, we see the other person as perfect, even viewing their flaws as endearing. We do not think about helping them grow because we feel they need no growth at all. Dr. Peck even argues that this is just a sweet trap set by human genes to ensure species reproduction, using intense passion to trick us into willingly entering marriage, leaving us with no way out once we sober up. Thus, falling in love is not true love. At best, it is a magical beginning in love's grand design. Beyond falling in love, the second major misunderstanding about love is equating dependence with love. This is most evident in people who suffer deeply from a broken relationship. They say, "I can't live without them. I love them so much." But doctors will tell them, what you describe is not love, but excessive dependence, a parasitic mentality. Being unable to survive without others means you are a parasite, and the other person is your host. Your relationship is not based on free choice, but on a need to fill an inner void. The book tells a typical story of a machine shop worker. His wife left him because he never cared about the family. He stayed up for 2 days and nights, crying, "I can't live without my family. I love them so much." But did he really love them? He could go months without speaking a word to his children. His pain stemmed from losing the role of husband and father, leaving him unsure of who he was. Yet in his deepest anguish, he met another recently broken up woman at a bar. They hit it off immediately, and he promptly recovered, cheerfully telling his doctor he no longer needed treatment. You see, for someone overly dependent, it does not matter who they depend on. As long as there is someone to cling to, making them feel their existence, they are content. The essence of such a relationship is not nurturing the other person, but clinging like a blood-sucking vine, draining the emotional nutrients they need, only suffocating the other person. The book says this so-called love is actually an addictive personality. They are not addicted to alcohol or drugs, but to others. The root of this dependence often lies in a lack of parental care in childhood, leaving them with an empty heart, feeling unworthy of others' love. We have just burst the 2 most beautiful bubbles about love. We know that the passion of falling in love is not love, nor is the inseparable dependence. So, stripped of these illusions and disguises, what does true love really look like? What efforts and actions does it require of us? This is what we will explore in the next section, the true art of love. We have just together burst the 2 most beautiful bubbles about love, falling in love and dependence. We know that electric passion is not love, nor is inseparable dependence. So, stripped of these illusions and disguises, what is the true face of love? Dr. Peck offers a definition at the book's soul. Love is a desire for self-improvement that promotes the mental maturity of oneself and others. This sentence is profound. Let's break it down. First, the 2 key words, desire. Love is not a feeling, but a desire. The book says the difference between feeling and desire is like saying, "I want to go swimming tonight," versus, "I will go swimming tonight." The former is just a thought. The latter is a strong urge leading to action. Everyone has thoughts of loving others, but only a few can turn those thoughts into sustained action. Thus, true love is a choice, a commitment, an action requiring our full effort. Second, what is love's goal? Not possession, not satisfaction, but promoting mental maturity. In other words, true love will inevitably make both you and the other person more complete and stronger than before. It will expand your boundaries and achieve self-improvement. So, what does this action-oriented love look like in daily life? Dr. Peck tells us that love's most important form is attention, and the most common yet vital way to pay attention is listening. Let's ask ourselves, do we really know how to listen? The book gives an example. The author once attended a highly advanced academic lecture. He sweated profusely, his neck stiff, yet only absorbed half the content. But after the lecture, he found most attendees were disappointed, complaining the speaker was incomprehensible. Why? Because they had not put in the effort to listen. Genuine listening requires full concentration, temporarily setting aside our own thoughts and desires to fully experience the speaker's feelings, especially when listening to children. The book details 5 typical reactions parents have when faced with a chattering 6-year-old. First, directly telling him to shut up. Second, ignoring him entirely. Third, pretending to listen, being distracted. Fourth, listening selectively, only catching what they deem important. And fifth, true listening. This wholehearted listening is an act of love in itself, bringing immense nourishment to the child. The book states that it makes the child feel respected, thereby building self-respect and self-love. It helps parents better understand their children, enabling more effective education. Eventually, the child will in turn respect their parents more and be more willing to listen to them. Conversely, the harm of not being listened to is profound. The book mentions a patient who wrote an excellent thesis at 22, yet his parents never even glanced at it for a whole year. That sense of neglect became a lasting pain in his heart. In addition to the efforts of paying attention and listening, true love requires another more important quality, and that is courage. Love has never been a safe and comfortable thing. It is an out-and-out adventure. First of all, love requires the risk of commitment, and making a commitment is the cornerstone of love. The book tells the story of Miss Rachel. Because she never received her parents' unconditional love and commitment in her childhood, she suffered from severe mental illness when she grew up. She was afraid of getting close to others because there was a voice deep in her heart saying, "I have to abandon you before you abandon me." To cure her, Dr. Peck had to first make a firm commitment to her. He said, "When I accept long-term patients like you, it means I have made a commitment to you and your condition. Whether it is 5 years or 10 years, as long as you need my service, I will never refuse." It was this commitment that gave Rachel an unprecedented sense of security, making her dare to open her heart and eventually recover. Secondly, love requires the risk of independence. This sounds contradictory, but true love will always respect the other person's independence and growth. Many parents love their children, but what they love is an obedient child who is an extension of themselves. Once the child has their own thoughts, this kind of love turns into control. The book quotes Khalil Gibran's famous poem to describe this healthy parent-child relationship: "Your children are not your children. They are the sons and daughters of life's longing for itself. You are the bow, and your children are the arrows shot forth from you. The archer loves the arrow that flies, and also loves the bow that is stable." To truly love someone is to be willing to be that stable and powerful bow, encouraging them to fly to their own higher and farther sky. Finally, and the most difficult point, love requires the risk of conflict. Traditional concepts hold that love is harmony and never saying words that hurt the other person. But Dr. Peck says this is not true love. To truly love someone means that you have the responsibility to care about and guide the other person's growth. When you see that the other person is on the wrong path, you must have the courage to point out their problems, even if it leads to conflict with them. The behavior of turning a blind eye to a loved one's problems and keeping silent to maintain superficial peace is essentially not love, but a kind of weakness and irresponsibility. Well, we know that love is a practice that requires self-discipline and courage. It requires us to make tangible efforts of attention, listening, and commitment, and to dare to face the risks of independence and conflict. But a deeper question emerges: where does the power deep in our hearts that desires to love and give come from? Why can some people still have the ability to love even if they grow up in the worst environment? Is there a greater force beyond our personal efforts working behind this? This is what we are going to explore in the last and most mysterious part of the book, the magical power. In the previous part, we relearned the true definition of love. But an ultimate question arises. Where does the impulse deep in our hearts that always urges us to become a better person come from? Why do some people, even if they are born in the worst environment, always seem to be dragged by something, not falling into the abyss, but living out their own light? Is there a greater force beyond our personal efforts working behind this? In the last and most climactic part of the book, Dr. Peck discusses this force, which he calls the magical power. This term may sound a bit mysterious, but don't jump to conclusions. Let's not think too complicatedly first. Think about it. Have you experienced similar moments in your life? For example, when you are driving on a familiar road, a strange thought suddenly flashes in your mind. Slow down. So you step on the brake subconsciously, and at that moment, a child or an electric bike suddenly rushes out from a corner you can't see. After that, you break out in a cold sweat, thinking, what a close call. What just happened? Or you are really puzzled by a problem and almost give up. As a result, when chatting with a friend, a casual sentence he says, or a passage you randomly open in a book, hits you like a bolt of lightning, making you suddenly see the light. These seemingly coincidences, luck, and our unexplainable sixth sense are actually the magical power speaking to us, and its main communication channel is our subconscious. We always think that the rational and awake self we can realize is all of us. But Dr. Peck says this is just the tip of the iceberg. Under our consciousness, there is a broader and wiser self, which is the subconscious. It is like a wise man living in our hearts, who knows us better than we know ourselves. It always wants to help us and guide us on the right path. It often sends us encrypted messages through dreams. There is a patient in the book who is successful in his career but extremely depressed. He dreams of a big cabinet like a coffin with 20 or 30 drawers. This dream is actually telling him in a symbolic way that your depression comes from the huge aura of your ancestors, which now brings you death-like pressure. It will also expose our disguise through our inadvertent slips of the tongue. That patient who pursues perfection says he is very satisfied with the doctor, but forgets to sign the check for the treatment fee. His subconscious is actually speaking the suppressed truth for him. I am very angry. Our subconscious is always more honest than ourselves. So you see, this magical power is not far away. It has always been deep in our hearts, and it is the healthier, wiser part of us that longs for our growth. Then, since each of us has such a powerful internal navigation in our bodies, why is our life still confused and full of pain? Here, Dr. Peck puts forward the most underlying worldview of the whole book. He borrows the law of entropy increase in physics. You may not be familiar with this term, but its meaning is simple. All things in the universe have a natural and irreversible tendency to go from order to disorder, from neatness to chaos. Just like your room, if you don't take the effort to clean it up, it will become more and more messy on its own. This force that makes everything become lazy, chaotic, and eventually decline is the power of entropy. And life, especially love and growth, is precisely the greatest anti-entropy behavior in the universe. It is an upward force that builds order from chaos and moves from simplicity to complexity. Now, please put this concept into our own inner world. What is the force of entropy in our hearts? It is our laziness. Laziness is the force that always pulls us down. It makes us covet comfort, avoid pain, be unwilling to think, and refuse to grow. Dr. Peck even believes that laziness is the only original sin of human beings. And the anti-entropy force in our hearts is our pursuit of love and growth. It is an upward force that drives us to constantly exercise self-discipline, expand the boundaries of ourselves, and achieve self-improvement. Dr. Peck further points out in the book that this anti-entropy force, the force that pursues love and growth, does not come out of nowhere. It comes from a higher force beyond our individual selves. This force has different names in different cultures. Some call it God, some call it natural law, and some call it Tao. But no matter what we call it, it is a broader existence, a force that we cannot fully understand but can truly feel. This force exists not only deep in our hearts, but also in all things in the universe. Dr. Peck believes that this force is the fundamental driving force for the evolution of the universe. The growth of human beings and the maturity of our minds essentially conform to this force. And our laziness, our evasion, and our fear are essentially obstacles to this force. Therefore, our journey of mental maturity is a journey of cooperation with this higher force. So, how can we cooperate with this higher force? Dr. Peck gives several suggestions. First of all, we should consciously contact and learn the wisdom that represents this force. It can be religion, philosophy, art, or science. They are all bridges for us to dialogue with this force. Secondly, we should practice this wisdom in daily life and use it to guide our behaviors. For example, we can start with the simplest things, such as honesty and love. We should always remind ourselves that every choice and every action we make is not a trivial matter. They are all manifestations of our cooperation with this force. Finally, we should consciously cultivate our sense of humility. We should always realize that we are not the center of the universe. We are just a part and an expression of the higher force. Our journey of mental maturity is essentially a process of constantly letting go of ourselves and surrendering to this higher force. At the end of the book, Dr. Peck describes the ultimate meaning of the journey of mental maturity in a very poetic way. He says, "We are like an evolving species. Our bodies evolve on a physical level, and our souls evolve on a spiritual level. Our goal is to keep evolving and maturing until one day we can fully and completely realize ourselves and reach divinity. This journey has no end. It is an endless exploration. But like all explorations, it is full of difficulties and miracles. It requires us to make efforts and open our hearts. It requires us to be brave and humble. But as long as we keep going, we can constantly surpass ourselves, get closer to that higher force, and get closer to the truth. This is what the book, The Road Less Traveled, wants to tell us. It is not an easy road, but it is a road worth taking. Because it leads to the self, to the truth, and to love. Each of us has to walk this road by ourselves, but knowing that there are people walking with us is a great comfort in itself. It is hoped that each of us can bravely embark on this road less traveled, constantly realize ourselves, constantly approach the truth, and constantly love. But Dr. Peck offers a profoundly counterintuitive insight here. He says the highest principle of maintaining balance is surrender. Surrender? Isn't that admitting defeat? We're taught from childhood to persist and strive. So why surrender? Wait, let's hear the author's story from when he was 9. That summer, he'd just learned to ride a bike. Once, he raced down a steep hill, thrilling at the wind rushing past. He knew a sharp turn waited at the bottom. Logically, he needed to brake to slow down and pass safely. But slowing down meant giving up the intense pleasure of the moment, a pleasure he clung to. Craving that speed and excitement, he decided to race through without slowing. What happened? Seconds later, he and his bike were thrown several meters, leaving him bruised and bleeding in the bushes, his new bike bent out of shape.